Hello, everyone, and welcome to Midnight Whispers. I know many of you listen to these stories to relax and slowly fall asleep. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from tonight. If you enjoy these stories, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, get comfortable, take a slow breath, and let's begin. I was very young when this happened. Young enough that sleep still came easily, and dreams blended into reality without warning. I remember that night clearly, even though so many years have passed. I was lying in my bed, wrapped in my blanket, with my right ear pressed deep into my pillow. The house was quiet in that way. Only nighttime can be quiet, when even small sounds feel louder, because everything else has gone still. I must have already been asleep for some time, because I had no memory of drifting off. One moment there was nothing, and the next moment everything changed. I was jolted awake by a sudden roar, so loud and so close that it felt like it went straight into my right ear. It wasn't like a normal noise, not like a shout or something falling. It was deeper, heavier, almost like sound itself had weight. For a split second, I thought something had exploded right beside my head. My heart started racing before my mind could catch up, and I sat up fast, gasping for air as if I had been underwater. I was completely confused. My body was awake, but my thoughts were tangled and slow, still caught halfway in sleep. Panic crept in almost immediately, spreading through my chest and into my arms. I started scanning my room, my eyes darting from corner to corner, searching for anything that could explain what had just happened. Shadows stretched strangely in the dark, made longer by the faint light coming in through the window. Every familiar object suddenly looked unfamiliar, like my room had shifted slightly while I slept. My mind was close to full panic mode. I didn't know if the sound had come from inside the house or inside my head. I listened closely, holding my breath, waiting to hear it again. But there was nothing. No footsteps, no voices, no movement. Just the soft hum of the house settling, and my own breathing, fast and uneven. That was when I turned my head to the right. Standing beside my bed was a little boy. At first, my brain couldn't fully process what I was seeing. He looked real, solid, like any other child. He was about my size, maybe a little smaller. He stood close enough that I felt like I could reach out and touch him. He wasn't threatening or scary in the way monsters are supposed to be. He wasn't twisted or distorted. He was just a boy. What made him different was the light. He was glowing blue. It wasn't a harsh glow, not bright enough to hurt my eyes. It was soft, almost gentle, like moonlight filtered through water. The glow wrapped around him evenly, outlining his small body and making his face easy to see even in the dark. The blue light reflected faintly off my bed and the wall, giving the room an unreal, dreamlike feel. But strangely, that wasn't the first thing I noticed. The first thing I noticed was his face. He looked sad. Not crying, not angry, just deeply sad in a quiet way that felt heavy. His eyes held a kind of loneliness that I didn't have words for back then. But somehow I understood it anyway. There was something about him that made my chest ache. Instead of fear, I felt sympathy. I remember feeling bad for him, the same way you feel bad when you see another kid sitting alone on a playground. We just looked at each other for a moment. Time felt slow, stretched thin. I don't remember screaming or trying to run. I don't remember calling for my parents. I was scared, yes, but the fear was muted by confusion and an odd sense of calm. It felt like he didn't mean any harm. It felt like he was there for a reason, even if I didn't understand what that reason was. After a minute, or maybe longer, I worked up the courage to move. Slowly, carefully, I leaned a little closer to him. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I didn't know what I was supposed to do or say, but something inside me told me not to pull away. Instead, I muttered a quiet "hey." My voice was barely louder than a whisper, shaky and unsure. The moment the word left my mouth, he disappeared. There was no flash, no dramatic movement. He didn't fade slowly or walk away. He was simply gone, like he had never been there at all. The space beside my bed was empty again, just air and shadows. The blue light vanished with him, and my room snapped back into darkness. I froze. I stared at the spot where he had been, my mind racing now, fear finally catching up with me. I pulled my blanket tighter around myself and sat there, listening, waiting for something else to happen. But nothing did. The house remained silent. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me back into sleep, though it wasn't peaceful. I woke up the next morning with the memory still fresh, replaying in my head as if it had happened seconds ago. A few days later, I told my mother what I had seen. I didn't know how she would react. I was worried she would laugh or tell me it was just a dream. But she listened carefully, her expression serious as I explained everything in my own clumsy, childlike way. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, like she was thinking about something. Then she told me something that made my stomach twist. She explained that the people who owned the house before us had a son. He had died when he was 5 years old in a car accident. She didn't know many details, only that it had been tragic and devastating for the family. What made it stranger was that the accident hadn't happened near the house. It wasn't like he had died there or been hurt on the property. At the time, I didn't fully understand what that meant. I just knew that the boy I had seen was about the same age. The thought settled into my mind and stayed there, growing heavier as I got older. There was something else about the house that mattered, too. When we moved in, the house had already been renovated. A second floor had been added, changing its original shape and layout. Walls had been moved, rooms restructured. What I thought of as my bedroom hadn't always existed in the same way. The house I lived in wasn't exactly the same house the boy had known. As I grew older, I started thinking about that night more deeply. Memories have a way of changing over time, but this one stayed clear. I remembered his sad expression more than anything else. Not fear, not shock, just sadness. It made me wonder why he had appeared to me specifically. My current theory is the only explanation that feels right to me. I think the boy finally found his way back home. Maybe wherever he had been, wherever he had gone after the accident. He eventually returned to the place he remembered as safe, the place that was supposed to be home. But when he arrived, everything was different. The house had changed. His old home was gone, replaced by something unfamiliar. New rooms, new walls, new people. I think he was confused, lost in a place that was once his. And I think he came to me because I was the new boy of the house. I was the one who slept in the space that didn't exist when he was alive. I was the one who had taken his place without even knowing it. Maybe he wasn't trying to scare me. Maybe he just wanted to be seen. Maybe he wanted acknowledgement or understanding, or simply to know that someone was there. Oh, that would explain the sadness in his eyes. He didn't stay long. Maybe once he realized that his home was truly gone, that things could never be the way they were, he left. Or maybe he just needed that brief moment of connection. A quiet hello in the dark. Whatever the truth is, that night has stayed with me. Not as a nightmare, but as a strange, gentle memory. One that makes me wonder about the idea of home and how deeply it can be tied to who we are, even after everything else is taken away. Last year, something happened to me that still makes my stomach drop when I think about it. Nothing actually happened in the sense that no one touched me or spoke to me, but that's exactly what makes it so unsettling. It was one of those moments where you only realize how close you might have been to danger after it's already passed. I was 12 at the time. It was winter, and I had just gotten back from school. I still had my backpack on and my lunchbox in my hand, and snow was falling steadily, the kind that makes everything quieter and softer. I was outside alone, standing near my house, watching the snow come down. It felt peaceful, almost calming. No one else was around, and the street was mostly empty. Then I noticed a white van. It pulled up and stopped in front of my neighbor's house. At first, I didn't think much of it. Cars come and go all the time, and it wasn't doing anything obvious. It just sat there. But then something clicked in my head, that dumb, half-joking thought kids have when they've heard too many warnings and stories. I remember thinking, almost sarcastically, that looks like one of those white vans that kidnaps children. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't feel full panic right away. It was more like a weird, uncomfortable thought that I tried to brush off. But the longer the van stayed there, the more wrong it felt. It wasn't moving. No one got out, no lights turned on. It was just sitting there, engine running, right in front of a house where I knew the people didn't own a white van. I stood there, frozen in place. Part of me told myself I was being stupid, that I was overthinking it, that not every white van means danger, but another part of me, a quieter part, kept track of the details. I was alone. I was 12. I was holding a backpack and a lunchbox, clearly a kid. The van hadn't left. It hadn't done anything, but it also hadn't done nothing. It just waited. I didn't go closer. I didn't run away either. I just stood there pretending I was interested in the snow, pretending everything was normal. I remember feeling exposed, like I was standing on a stage without realizing it. Every second felt longer than it should have. Then my mom came outside. She opened the door and called out to me, asking why I was still standing outside instead of coming in. Her voice snapped me out of whatever strange, tense bubble I was stuck in. I told her I was just looking at the snow. She told me to come inside, and the moment she stepped fully outside, the van sped away. Not slowly, not casually pulling off. It took off immediately, like it had been waiting for something to change and decided it was time to leave. That's the part that still chills me. The timing was too perfect. The van had been sitting there the entire time I was alone, not moving, not doing anything obvious. And the second an adult appeared, the second I wasn't by myself anymore, it was gone. No hesitation, no lingering, just gone. I didn't say anything right away. I went inside like my mom told me to. I took off my shoes and coat, trying to act normal, but my heart was pounding harder than I wanted to admit. Later, when I thought about it, the what-ifs started piling up. What if my mom hadn't come outside when she did? What if I had decided to walk closer to the van just to see who was inside? What if I had stood there a little longer? Nothing actually happened, and I know that. But that doesn't make it less scary. In some ways, it makes it worse, because there was no clear explanation, no proof. Just a moment that could have gone very differently if one small thing had changed. I still think about that van sometimes. about how quiet it was, about how it waited, about how fast it left when it realized I wasn't alone anymore. I don't know who was inside or why it was there, and I probably never will. But I shudder to think about what could have happened if my mom hadn't stepped outside when she did, or if I had followed that stupid, curious urge to investigate. Sometimes, the scariest experiences aren't the ones where something bad actually happens. They're the ones where you realize how close you might have been. So this happened one night when I went to the park to walk my dog. It was late, around 11 at night, UK time. The kind of late where the world feels thinner, quieter, like you're walking through a place that isn't meant to be occupied anymore. The park was technically still open, but no one ever goes there that late, especially in winter. The air was cold and damp, the kind that creeps into your bones even when you're wearing layers. My dog didn't seem bothered by it, just trotting along, sniffing at the grass like it was any other walk. There's a boathouse in this park, a small one, where they keep canoes and rowing equipment during the warmer months. In winter, it's completely dead. No lights on, no staff, no activity. It just sits there by the water, dark and silent, like it's waiting for summer to come back. I've walked past it loads of times during the day, and even then it feels a bit eerie, but at night, it's something else entirely. As we were walking past I noticed something strange. Every time I walked away from the boathouse, I could see a shadow moving inside through the windows. It wasn't random. It wasn't like branches swaying or light reflecting off the water. It looked deliberate, like something pacing back and forth inside. The weird part was that it only seemed to happen when I wasn't looking directly at it. The moment I slowed down or turned slightly, the movement would stop. At first, I tried to explain it away. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe it was my reflection mixed with the darkness. When you're tired and it's late, your brain fills in gaps that aren't really there. Still, the feeling didn't go away. That uncomfortable sense of being watched settled in my chest, the kind that makes you hyper-aware of every sound and movement around you. I kept walking, but I glanced back again and saw the shadow moving once more, pacing like someone trapped in a small space. That's when curiosity got the better of me. I've always been like that. Instead of backing away when something feels wrong, part of me wants to know why. What is it? What's causing it? Can I see it clearly and make sense of it? So I walked toward the boathouse windows. My dog hesitated slightly, pulling back on the lead, which was unusual for him. He's normally fearless, more interested in smells than anything else. I ignored it and leaned closer to the glass, peering inside. The interior was empty. Completely empty. No person, no movement, no sign that anyone had been there at all. Just stacked canoes, metal racks, and darkness. The shadow I'd seen moments earlier was gone. That alone should have been enough to make me leave. I straightened up and started walking away, telling myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe the glass had distorted the light. Maybe my brain had played tricks on me. I'd almost convinced myself when something made me stop again. I looked back. This time I didn't see a shadow inside. The boathouse. I saw a man sitting on the bench outside. The bench is near the boathouse, close to the path that runs along the water. I swear he hadn't been there a moment before. One second the area was empty. The next, there was someone sitting there, completely still, like he'd been dropped into place. My heart jumped, because I hadn't heard footsteps or movement. He was just there. I wasn't alone anymore at this point. My cousin was with me. He's older than me, taller, more confident, the type of person who doesn't scare easily and doesn't believe in anything supernatural. When I pointed the man out to him, he didn't hesitate. He just said something like, "Probably just someone hanging around," and started walking toward him. I stayed where I was for a second, watching. As my cousin got closer, the man suddenly sprang to his feet. The movement was fast and sharp, not like someone standing up normally. It was like he'd been coiled tight and then released all, at once. He didn't say anything. He didn't look at us. He just started walking away down the path. Something about it felt wrong. My cousin, instead of backing off, decided to follow him. I called out to him, telling him to leave it, that it was weird, but he waved me off. I didn't want to be left alone, so I followed too, my dog pulling nervously at the lead now, whining under his breath. The man walked at a steady pace, not fast, not slow. We followed him across a small bridge that goes over a narrow stretch of water connecting to the lake. The sound of our footsteps echoed strangely in the quiet. I kept waiting for the man to turn around and say something. Anything. Even just to tell us to stop following him. Then he turned. I will never forget his face. It was pure white. Not pale like someone who's sick or cold, but white in a way that didn't look natural, like all the color had been drained from him. His eyes were red. Not bloodshot, not irritated, but solid red, catching what little light there was and reflecting it back at us. There was no expression on his face, no anger, no fear, no confusion, just emptiness. My cousin stopped dead in his tracks. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked genuinely shaken. He tried to speak, to ask the man if he was all right or what he was doing, but no words came out of the man's mouth. He just stared at us for a second longer than felt comfortable, then turned and continued walking. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to turn around, to grab my cousin, and run, to get out of that park as fast as possible. But fear can freeze you just as easily as it can make you move. We followed him a bit further, still across the bridge, still along the path, until something happened that I still struggle to explain. My cousin and I both blinked. Just a normal blink. A fraction of a second where your eyes close and open again. And the man was gone. There was nowhere he could have gone. The path was straight, open, with nowhere to hide. No trees close enough to duck behind, no turns, no buildings. One moment he was there, walking away from us, and the next moment the path was completely empty. We stood there in silence, staring at the space where he had been. Neither of us spoke at first. I think we were both trying to rationalize what we'd just seen. Maybe he'd run somehow. Maybe the darkness had played tricks on our eyes. But deep down, we both knew that explanation didn't fit. You don't disappear into thin air in the time it takes two people to blink. My dog started barking then, loud and sharp, straining at the lead like he wanted to get away from that place immediately. That snapped us both out of it. My cousin grabbed my arm and said, "We're leaving. Now." There was no arguing, no bravado left. Whatever confidence he'd had before was gone. We walked quickly back the way we came, not running, but moving fast enough that it was obvious we were trying to put distance between ourselves and the boathouse, the bench, the bridge. I didn't look back again. I didn't want to see if the man had reappeared. I didn't want to see anything else at all. When we finally reached the edge of the park and the streetlights came back into view, I felt like I could breathe again. The normal sounds of the town, distant cars, the hum of electricity, all of it felt strangely comforting. My cousin didn't joke about it. He didn't laugh it off. He didn't try to explain it away. He just kept walking, quiet and tense. We didn't talk about it much that night. We both went inside and pretended everything was normal, but I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face again. The white skin, the red eyes, the way he stood up so suddenly, the way he vanished like he'd never existed at all. Even now, thinking about it gives me chills. I don't know what that man was. I don't know if it was something paranormal, or some kind of shared hallucination, or something else entirely. I just know that two of us saw the same thing, reacted the same way, and experienced the same impossible disappearance. That's what makes it hard to dismiss. I still walk my dog, but I don't go to that park late at night anymore. I don't go anywhere near the boathouse when it's dark. Sometimes, when I drive past during the day, it looks completely harmless. Just a small building by the water. Nothing special, nothing threatening. But I know what I saw there. And I know that if my cousin hadn't been with me, I don't know how I would have reacted. Part of me is glad I wasn't alone. Another part of me wonders if the only reason it happened the way it did was because we were together. Maybe whatever it was didn't expect to be followed. Maybe it didn't expect to be seen so clearly. All I know is this. That night changed the way I look at quiet places and empty parks. It taught me that sometimes curiosity isn't harmless, and that not everything you see after dark wants to be understood. Some things are better left alone. Sorry to interrupt for just a moment. If you're new here, consider subscribing to Midnight Whispers for daily true horror stories that stay with you long after they're told, quietly unsettling and meant for the late hours. You can also turn on notifications so you're always here when a new story arrives and the night begins to stir again. Now, let's continue. When my friend and I were about 12 years old, we stayed the night at my grandmother's house. It wasn't unusual for us to sleep over there, but that night felt different from the beginning, even if I couldn't have explained why at the time. My grandmother was extremely religious, the kind of person whose faith filled every corner of her life and her home. Crosses on the walls, Bibles on every table, religious programs always playing quietly in the background. Even the guest room we slept in was filled with old biblical paintings. Those paintings were unsettling in a way I didn't yet have the words for. They weren't comforting images of gentle angels or peaceful scenes. They were intense, stark. Faces frozen in fear or devotion. Eyes that seemed to follow you no matter where you stood. My friend and I joked about them at first, trying to laugh it off. But the longer we stayed in that room, the more uncomfortable we became. Eventually, we took the paintings down and turned them around so they were facing the wall. We told ourselves it was silly to be scared of paintings, but neither of us wanted to look at them while trying to sleep. That should have been the end of it. 2 kids, a sleepover, some nervous laughter, and then sleep. But that night was the first time I ever experienced sleep paralysis. At the time, I had no idea what it was. I didn't know it had a name, or that other people experienced it. All I knew was that I was trapped in my own body. I remember dreaming, though the dream itself is fuzzy now, like something slipping away the harder you try to hold on to it. What I remember clearly is the panic. The sudden awareness that I was awake but couldn't move. My chest felt heavy, like something visible was pressing down on me. I tried to breathe deeply, but it felt shallow and wrong. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. The fear was overwhelming. It felt like my body had betrayed me, like I had been left defenseless inside my own skin. My mind was racing, screaming at my body to move, to sit up, to do anything at all. Eventually, somehow, I forced myself to scream. The sound tore out of me, loud and raw, and that was what finally broke the paralysis. My scream woke my friend. She shot upright in bed, confused and scared, asking what was wrong. I was still half trapped between sleep and waking, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. I was trying to explain, trying to catch my breath, when something caught both of our attention at the same time. We looked straight ahead. Standing in front of us, at the foot of the bed, was a woman. She wasn't looming or aggressive. She wasn't reaching for us or moving toward us. She was just standing there, completely still. What struck me immediately was her expression. She looked terrified, shocked, like she had just seen something horrible and didn't understand it. Her face was frozen in fear, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, as if she wanted to say something but couldn't. I remember screaming again. Pure panic. I yelled at her, demanding to know who she was, why she was there. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too loud and desperate. My friend was screaming too. We were both scrambling backward on the bed, tangled in blankets, hearts racing. And then the light came on. The room flooded with light all at once, harsh and bright after the darkness. In that instant, she was gone, not fading away slowly, not moving out of sight, just gone, as if she had never been there at all. The space where she had been standing was empty. The silence afterward was deafening. We just sat there, staring at the empty space, trying to understand what had happened. My grandmother came rushing in, asking what was wrong, turning on more lights, trying to calm us down. We were talking over each other, both trying to explain, both saying the same thing in different words. There had been a woman. She had been right there. She disappeared when the light came on. Later, when things finally settled down and we were alone again, my friend and I talked about it quietly. That was when it got even stranger. Without prompting each other, we described the woman in the exact same way. The same haircut, the same style of dress, the same terrified expression on her face. We weren't guessing or filling in details after the fact. We knew what we had seen. That part has never left me. If it had just been me, I could have convinced myself it was the sleep paralysis, a hallucination, my brain misfiring in a vulnerable moment. But my friend saw her too. She hadn't been paralyzed. She hadn't been asleep in the same way I had. She was fully awake when she saw the woman standing there. As if the night wasn't disturbing enough, the next morning brought something else entirely. My friend woke up to find blood all over the bed. It was her first period, something she hadn't experienced before and wasn't prepared for. She was embarrassed and scared, and the timing made it feel surreal, almost symbolic in a way neither of us could articulate. Blood, fear, a strange figure in the night, religious imagery everywhere. It all blended together into something deeply unsettling. That day felt heavy, like a fog hung over everything. We didn't laugh much. We didn't joke about it anymore. We avoided the guest room as much as we could. My grandmother tried to comfort us with prayer and reassurance, but nothing really made it feel better. We left not long after, and I remember feeling relieved to go home, like I was escaping something I didn't understand. Over the years, my friend and I have brought the story up from time to time. Usually late at night, usually when we're already talking about strange or unexplainable things. Every time we do, we get chills. The details have never changed. We still remember her the same way. We still remember how real she looked, how frightened she seemed. I've learned a lot about sleep paralysis since then. I understand how powerful and vivid it can be, how the brain can create incredibly realistic hallucinations. I understand how fear can shape memory. I've tried to rationalize it as much as possible, to fit it into a box that makes sense. But there are parts of that night that don't fit neatly into any explanation. The fact that my friend saw her too. The fact that we described her identically. The fact that her expression wasn't threatening but terrified. As if she was just as afraid as we were. Even now, thinking about it makes my skin prickle. Not because I'm convinced it was something supernatural, but because I don't know what it was, and sometimes not knowing is worse than believing in something specific. That night marked the beginning of my sleep paralysis experiences, though none have ever been quite like that first one. I've had episodes since, but never with a shared vision. Never with another person seeing the same thing. That remains unique, locked in time as one of the strangest and most unsettling experiences of my childhood. It's not something that ruined my life or left me unable to sleep, but it did change the way I think about the boundary between sleep and waking, between imagination and reality. It made me aware at a young age that the mind is capable of creating experiences that feel absolutely real, experiences that can stay with you long after you've grown up. Sometimes I think about that woman, about the fear on her face. I wonder who she was supposed to be or what my brain was trying to process in that moment. Or if she was something else entirely. I don't have answers, and I've learned to live with that. But every now and then when I think back on that night, I still feel the same chill I did at 12 years old. The same sense that I brushed up against something I don't fully understand. And that feeling, more than anything else, is what has stayed with me all these years. In 2013 in the Philippines, and even now I still struggle with how to fully understand it. At the time I was young, curious, and honestly a little arrogant about the idea of the supernatural. I had always carried this very firm belief of, I need to see it to believe it. Ghost stories, haunted places, spirits, all of that felt like exaggerated folklore meant to scare children into behaving or to give boring places some mystery. I didn't dismiss it aggressively, but I didn't respect it either. I thought if something like that really existed, I would know. I would see it clearly. I would be able to explain it. That night changed the way I think about certainty. Near where we lived, there was an old elementary school that everyone in the area talked about. Not in a casual way, but in that hushed, serious tone people use when they genuinely believe something is wrong with a place. The local story was that during World War II, the school had been used as a Japanese outpost. No one ever went into details about what exactly happened there. But the implication was always the same. People suffered. People died. People saw things they were never supposed to see. Over the years, there were countless stories about sightings, shadows, figures, and people who went in perfectly normal and came out shaken, paranoid, or completely changed. Some people said they went crazy. I didn't believe that part. I thought fear and imagination could do a lot to a person, especially if they already expected to see something. But still, the stories stuck with me. The school wasn't abandoned, which somehow made it worse. During the day, it was full of children, laughter, noise, and life. At night, it became something else entirely. Empty classrooms, long hallways, open fields with buildings looming around them. Silence that felt too deliberate. So I decided to test it. I wasn't alone. There were 4 of us that night. A was me. B, C, and D were locals, people who had grown up hearing these stories their entire lives. They shared my curiosity, though I think their curiosity was mixed with respect and caution in a way mine wasn't. Still, they agreed to go with me. Maybe they wanted answers too. Maybe they wanted confirmation that what they'd heard all their lives wasn't just superstition. We decided to go late. Around 9:50 p.m., just before 10. Late enough that no one else would be around, but not so late that it felt reckless. The sky was clear, no clouds at all, and there was a full moon. Not just visible, but bright. Bright enough that we barely needed flashlights. The moonlight washed over everything, turning the school into something pale and unreal, like a photograph drained of color. The layout of the school was important. At the center was a wide, grassy field, maybe about half the length of an American football field. Around it were the buildings, classrooms, offices, and other facilities where students spent their mornings. From one side, you could see almost everything at once. It felt exposed, like there was nowhere to hide if something decided to show itself. We sat on a set of steps in front of the main office. From there, we had a clear view of the entire field and most of the buildings surrounding it. B told us that if anything was going to appear, we had to be completely silent. No whispering, no joking, no distractions. According to him, whatever was there wouldn't show itself unless it chose to. All we could do was wait. So we waited. At first, nothing happened. Minutes passed slowly. I stayed alert, scanning the field, the buildings, the shadows between them. My mind started to drift. Boredom crept in. I remember thinking that this was exactly what I expected. A quiet place, a quiet night, and a bunch of stories that didn't hold up when you challenged them. Then it happened. Directly across the field from where we were sitting, 4 figures appeared. Not suddenly, like popping into existence, but gradually. At first they were blurry, indistinct shapes, almost like heat distortions in the air. My brain tried to dismiss them immediately. Maybe shadows, maybe my eyes adjusting. But they didn't fade. They became clearer. It was exactly like watching an image load on early internet connections. Pixel by pixel, second by second. The longer I stared, the more detail filled in. I felt the hair on my arm stand up. A deep sense of unease settled in my chest, heavy and cold. There were 4 of them, 2 men and 2 women. They weren't transparent in a ghostly, see-through way. They were translucent, but solid enough that you could see details. Their clothes were old, traditional. The men were wearing barongs, the traditional Filipino formal clothing, long-sleeved and light-colored. The women wore old-style traditional dresses, the kind you only see in old photos or history books. The fabric, the folds, the way the clothes hung on their bodies, it was all incredibly clear, as if someone had carefully designed them in high definition. They weren't doing anything. They were just standing there. What made it even stranger was their posture. They weren't facing us directly. All 4 of them were looking at the moon. 2 of them had their bodies angled toward us, but their heads turned to the left, toward the moon, which was on our right. The other 2 stood at slightly different angles, but their attention was the same. The moon. We watched them. They watched the sky. Time felt distorted. I don't know how long we sat there, silently observing these figures as they stood completely still. No walking, no gestures, no acknowledgement of us. Just quiet, unmoving presence. Then clouds rolled in. Slowly, deliberately, they covered the moon. The school darkened as the light disappeared. Shadows deepened. The atmosphere changed instantly, like the air itself had shifted. When the clouds moved on and the moonlight returned, the figures were gone. No fading, no movement, just gone. We all turned to each other at once. C was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. He asked if we had all seen the same thing. Each of us said yes. There was no excitement in our voices, no triumph. Just disbelief and a growing sense that we had crossed the line we didn't fully understand. But somehow, that still wasn't enough. Our curiosity hadn't been satisfied. If anything, it had been sharpened. We crossed the field and made our way to the home economics building. This was known as the most haunted building in the school. Next to it stood a massive mango tree. In Southeast Asia, mango trees are often believed to house spirits, sometimes protective, sometimes malicious. People avoid them at night. People don't linger near them without reason. We stood in front of the building. There was nowhere to sit until Dee found a stack of plastic chairs nearby. We each took one and sat in a row, our backs to the building. We spoke quietly, trying to keep our voices low, not wanting to disturb whatever silence had settled around us. One of us finished speaking. Then we heard it. A roar. It came from directly behind us. It wasn't an animal sound. It wasn't anything familiar. It was deep, violent, filled with rage and hatred. There was something unnatural about it, something that made my stomach drop instantly. It didn't echo the way normal sounds do. It felt like it came from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Chills ran down my spine. I leaned forward to look at the others, and the expressions on their faces told me everything. Pure terror. Eyes wide, faces pale. No one spoke. B told us to leave. No hesitation. No debate. We stood up, returned the chairs to where we found them, and left that area as quickly and quietly as we could. But the night wasn't done with us. We made our way to the school's open gymnasium, a basketball court, with only 4 pillars supporting a roof. The sides were completely open. It offered no real shelter, no real sense of protection. We sat along the edge, facing the field again, our backs toward the half-court line. By now, the moonlight was gone. Darkness surrounded us. We sat in silence, still processing what we had heard. We knew for a fact that no one else was in the school. No guards, no students, just the 4 of us. Then we heard footsteps, slippers slapping against concrete. Slow, deliberate, rhythmic. At first they were faint, then louder. Then as they got closer, quieter. The sound moved toward us, step by step, like something playing with distance, using sound to let us know exactly where it was. It stopped, right behind us. I wanted to run. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to get away, but something stopped me. A strange thought crossed my mind that running might make it follow me forever. That fear might be exactly what it wanted. B reached into his pocket and pulled out a cigarette. He lit it quickly with a match and waved the smoke around us in a slow, deliberate motion. I looked at him, confused. He spoke calmly, firmly, without fear. To shoo away bad spirits and protect us. As strange as it sounds, it worked. The fear began to fade. Not instantly, but slowly, like a pressure being lifted from my chest. We stood up together and walked home. Not running, not looking back. More things happened after that night. Things that would take another story entirely to explain. But that was enough for me. My English isn't perfect, but I hope I was able to paint the picture clearly. That night taught me something important. Some experiences don't care whether you believe in them or not. They don't need your permission to exist. And sometimes seeing really is believing, even when you wish you hadn't. My grandfather told me this story years ago. And even though I'm not particularly fond of him as a person, it's one of the few things he ever said that I never doubted. He wasn't the type to exaggerate. And he definitely wasn't someone who liked ghost stories or anything supernatural. If anything, he was dismissive of that kind of thing. That's part of why this has stayed with me. He didn't tell it like a scary story. He told it like something that happened, something he never really found an answer for, and something that bothered him enough to remember clearly decades later. This happened when he was younger, back when he was still working long, irregular hours. One night, he had been out on a job that ran late. I don't remember exactly what kind of work it was, only that it wasn't unusual for him to be driving home well after dark. The route he took followed a long stretch of road that ran parallel to a river. It was a rural area, not many houses, not much traffic, at night. Just the road, the river, and trees on either side. The kind of place that feels isolated even during the day and completely empty at night. He was driving alone, tired, just focused on getting home. At some point along the road, his headlights caught movement on the shoulder. As he got closer, he saw two boys walking along the side of the road. They were close to the river, heading in the same direction he was driving. He said they looked young, maybe early teens. Not toddlers, but not grown either. Just two kids out walking late at night. It struck him as a little odd, but not enough to stop or do anything about it. People do strange things, especially kids. Maybe they live nearby. Maybe they were sneaking out. Maybe they were just out walking for whatever reason. He slowed down slightly as he passed them, glanced over, and then continued on his way. The road was straight enough that they stayed in his rearview mirror for a moment before disappearing into the darkness behind him. He didn't think about them again right away. About a mile later, his headlights picked up movement again. Two boys, walking on the side of the road, same direction, same spacing between them, close to the river. At first, he assumed he was mistaken. Maybe these were different kids. Maybe he had misjudged how far he'd driven. Maybe the road curved more than he remembered. But the more he looked, the more unsettled he felt. They looked the same. Same height difference. Same way of walking. Side by side, quiet, unhurried. He passed them again. This time he paid closer attention. He didn't roll down the window or stop the car, but he looked at them as carefully as he could while driving past. He said they didn't react at all. No turning to look at the car, no acknowledgement. Just walking forward, steady, calm, as if they were completely alone on that road. That's when he started to feel uneasy. It wasn't panic, not fear in the dramatic sense. More like a deep, creeping discomfort. The kind where your brain is trying to line things up logically and failing. Two kids could not have walked a mile in the time it took him to drive it, especially not at that pace. And yet there they were. He kept driving. He told himself there had to be an explanation. Maybe there was a side path. Maybe there was a shortcut along the riverbank. Maybe he'd imagined the first pair entirely. Tiredness does strange things to your perception. He held on to that thought as long as he could. A few minutes later, he pulled into a gas station. It was one of those small, older stations. Just a couple of pumps, a small building, and a single attendant working the counter. The place was lit up enough to feel safe, but beyond the circle of light, the darkness pressed in close. He got out of his car, stretched, and went inside. He didn't plan on telling anyone about what he'd seen. He just wanted a minute to reset before finishing the drive home. The attendant struck up a conversation, the way people do late at night when things are slow and quiet. They talked about the weather, the road conditions, nothing important. At some point, my grandfather mentioned the kids he'd seen walking along the river road. He said it casually, almost as an afterthought. Something like, "Strange to see kids out walking that late." The attendant didn't laugh. Instead, he got very still. Then he said something along the lines of, You saw them tonight?" That caught my grandfather off guard. He asked what he meant. The attendant hesitated for a moment, then told him that it was actually a pretty common thing. People driving along that road at night would sometimes see two boys walking near the river, always together, always quiet, always heading in the same direction. Years earlier, two boys had drowned in that river. They had gone down there together, no adults with them. No one knew exactly what happened. Maybe they slipped. Maybe one fell in and the other tried to help. By the time anyone realized they were missing, it was too late. Their bodies were found downstream days later. After that, people started reporting sightings. At first, it was dismissed as imagination. Stories spread in small communities, especially ones built around tragedy. But over time, the reports kept coming. Different people, different nights, same description. Two boys walking near the water late at night, never interacting, never responding, never going anywhere specific. The attendant told my grandfather this like it was just a fact of the area. Not sensationalized, not whispered. Just something you knew if you lived or worked nearby long enough. My grandfather didn't know what to say. He paid for his gas, thanked the attendant, and left. He finished the drive home without seeing them again, but he said the rest of the ride felt longer than usual. The road felt narrower. The river felt closer. Every shadow on the shoulder caught his attention. He never forgot it. What makes this story stick with me isn't just the idea of ghosts or drowned children or apparitions on a dark road. It's the way he told it. He didn't dress it up. He didn't say he knew for sure what they were. He didn't claim he spoke to them or that they looked at him or that anything dramatic happened afterward. He just saw them. Twice. In a way that didn't make sense. And then he learned that other people had seen them too. He never went looking for them again. He didn't drive that road at night if he could avoid it. He didn't tell the story often. I only heard it once or twice, and always in a quiet, matter-of-fact way. No emotion, no fear in his voice. Just unease. I've thought about that story a lot over the years. I think about how many tragedies happen quietly, especially involving children. How places absorb those events and keep them in ways we don't fully understand. I think about how easy it is to dismiss stories like that as folklore, and how different it feels when someone you trust tells you they saw it themselves. I also think about the boys. If the story is true, if what people were seeing really was some echo of them, it's strangely sad rather than frightening. Two kids walking the same stretch of road over and over near the river where they died. Not threatening anyone, not trying to scare anyone. Just existing in that space, repeating something they once did when they were alive. Maybe it was imagination. Maybe fatigue and suggestion played a role. Maybe the mind fills in gaps when you drive alone at night for too long. I don't pretend to know the answer, but I do know this. My grandfather wasn't someone who believed in things without reason. He didn't like mystery. He didn't like not having explanations. And yet, this was one of the few things he never tried to explain away completely. He never said, it was nothing. He never said, I figured it out later. He just said he saw them, learned the story, and accepted that some things don't come with answers. I don't like my grandfather much. We don't share values, and we don't share warmth. But I know when he lied, and I know when he didn't. And this is one of the stories I believe him about. That's what makes it unsettling. Not the idea of ghosts, but the idea that sometimes the world quietly holds on to moments of loss, and every now and then, someone stumbles into them on a dark road by a river, with no warning and no explanation, and carries that moment with them for the rest of their life. If you're still here, then these stories didn't simply fade away. They settled in. Every story you heard tonight came from real moments, real people, and real situations where something felt off or nearly went wrong. If you want to keep exploring stories that linger in your thoughts long after the night grows quiet, consider subscribing to Midnight Whispers. There are more stories waiting in the dark, and not all of them let you leave in time.